welcome to episode 18 of Abbott and Costello Meet the Podcast. I'm Jerry Shario, and today we'll be talking about the film Little Giant. And as I'm sure most of you realize, Little Giant is an oxymoron. And speaking of oxymoron, here's Nick Santamaria.
Hey! Am I more oxy or moron?
I'll leave that up to the general public.
To me, oxy is a descriptive word, meaning that I'm fat. Moron, I think, is more on the money. Moron.
I like that one better, yeah.
More on the money. They say moron is more on the money. Okay. Yep. Anyway, thank you, Jerry. Thank you very much. I appreciate that complimentary intro. And intro is one of my favorite Marx Brothers. Actually, Zeppo could have been named Intro because he was always introducing Groucho.
Yes.
Intro Marx. I'm sorry, but and if he goes into space, he could become intravenous. All right, enough needling. Let's go with Little Giant, made in 1946. Actually, it began shooting at the end of 1945. This is a very special movie, and for a few reasons. Number one, the war was ending while they were filming this movie. Just as they were filming this movie, the war was ending. And the very last references they made to World War II was 2 years previous, actually 3 years previous, in It Ain't Hay. And everything else was, they didn't mention World War II, which was kind of unusual for Abbott and Costello. So things were ending, things were changing post-war. The audience wasn't going for routines separated by songs, by popular songs, as a big mishmash, crazy, funny thing. Let's face it, we love those movies, definitely, but they are of a certain time and a certain style.
Yeah.
And now things were becoming a bit more situational. Movies were more plot heavy. They were less capricious, less crazy. And Bud and Lou knew this at the time, that they had to start changing. Here's the deal. A lot of people felt, and I know, Jerry, you've heard about their big feud over Lou's maid.
Yep.
We talked about it in the Ain't Hay episode. And basically, just to recap, Lou had a maid who he refused to give her a raise. And the maid started meeting with the other servants, to plot against him. And he eventually fired her. She went to Bud Abbott, and Bud Abbott hired her. So, that was sort of a aggressive, passive-aggressive kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And Lou took it very personally. The two of them did not speak for, some say 6 months, some say 4 months, some say a year. It wasn't that long. But they stopped talking, and they only spoke on stage. They were very, very angry. Now, the timeline for this argument, both of them gave as 1945, which was while they were doing Naughty 90s and before this film. You'd never know it from the outtakes. And again, I go to the outtakes to see what the mood of the guys are while they're making the films, right, Jer?
Yeah.
You can see they're more playful during certain moments. And there is just that one moment in It Ain't Hay from 1943, I believe, where Lou is really angry with Bud.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, maybe that was the time. And maybe they were just off by a couple of years. But you never know. So a lot of people thought that Little Giant, since it is a situational comedy where Bud and Lou play separate characters, they are not a team in this movie. This is a Lou Costello starring film with Bud Abbott in support, right?
Yep.
And I know they gave Bud Abbott a dual role just to appease him because, let's face it, it was very obvious that this was a Lou movie, sort of a Louvie. So here's what happened. The argument was settled. By the time they made this movie, the argument was long settled. In fact, back in early 1944, the writers were already writing treatments for movies where they were not teamed, where the boys were not teamed. It was already happening. The writing was on the wall. Box office was slipping, not to the point where they weren't making money. They were making a ton of money, but it was slipping at this point. They were completely overexposed. Universal kept re-releasing their films. MGM was releasing their films. They were on radio every week. They made guest appearances on radio. They did personal appearances. You couldn't spit without hitting Abbott and Costello. So they knew that they had to do something different. And this was, I have to say, this was Lou's idea. He went to the writers and said, please write us something that, is more situational, something where I can do some acting, and all of that. A lot of people look at Lou, how can I put this? They say he's got the Chaplin complex, the Chaplin complex. That's, he wants pathos. He wants to be serious once in a while. And he gets a lot of flack for that, especially with modern day audiences. And I say, fneh to you. Wait, let me wipe off my screen. Hold on. That's ridiculous. First of all, he had so much more than just Who's on First. Yeah. He was an actor. He was a very good actor, a very natural actor, instinctive. And Bud was too. When you watch Bud in this movie, his Mr. Morrison character is a out and out villain. He's the villain of this film. The villain of this villain. And he plays a dual role. And in the other role, he plays a lovable Abbott. He plays Mr. Chandler, who is Mr. Morrison's cousin, but he's very, very nice. So Bud gets to show us both sides of that personality. And he also, there is a third character, but it's just a painting. He plays his own grandmother.
Yes.
And Jack Pierce, our beloved makeup man at Universal, who's responsible for the Frankenstein monster and the mummy and the Wolfman, he put Bud's grandmother together on Bud. And Bud was dressed as this old lady. And what he did, the day they shot that picture of him dressed in full drag, he went home that way. And he sat in the living room while his wife, Betty, went to the kids and said, by the way, you've never met your grandmother. She's here today. And they walked in and they saw this old woman who looked just like their father. But then he started laughing and it just blew the whole thing. But boy, that's amazing.
That's good.
Yeah, isn't that great? Yeah, Bud used to do stuff like that. He was a practical joker. In fact, Bud and Lou used to do it. They were constantly doing stuff to each other in that sense. Okay, so here we are. Some people claim the feud caused this film. That's not the truth. It was actually the fact that they had to do something different. And Lou was the more ambitious of the two, and Bud had to go along, basically. I hate to say that, but it's true. He had to go along. Okay, so who directed this film? William A. Sider.
Yes.
Seiter. An A-list director who was actually requested by Lou. He wanted a front-running, director. Mm-hmm. Well, let's start at the beginning. He was born in New York City in 1890, lived till 1964. He died at the age of 74. Started out as a bit player at Max Sennett Studios in 1915. Started directing in 1918. And before you know it, he's directing Wheeler and Woolsey in 3 films, Caught Plastered, Girl Crazy, and Diplomaniacs, which is a great favorite among fans. He also directed Laurel and Hardy in what is considered by most to be their best film, Sons of the Desert. Also, he did Going Wild with Joey Brown. Mm-hmm. His most famous comedy is Room Service with the Marx Brothers. Oh, he also did one of the episodes of If I Had a Million. He did the one with Gary Cooper and Jack Oakey and Roscoe Carnes. Not very good. Yeah, he was known for his pacing, and it wasn't fast pacing. It was slow, methodical pacing. And it didn't always work in his favor. In fact, now that it's Christmas, let's bring up the movie The Bishop's Wife, Goldwyn movie starring Cary Grant and David Niven and Loretta Young. He was fired from that film because the pacing was too slow, too lethargic. Yeah, so they hired Henry Koster, and he finished the film. So you have William Sider, who was requested by Lou, and they did not get along. Yeah. William Sider was like I said, he was very methodical. He liked to film what was in the script. Now right away, I know you fans out there of Abbott and Costello, your ears just went up when I said, learn the script. No, Lou did not work that way. Yep. Lou learned the essence of the scene, and he walked in and did it the way Lou does it. Unfortunately, people like Jacqueline DeWitt, who plays Bud's wife in this movie, she was petrified that she got this role. She was petrified. Everybody at Universal knew what it was like to work with Abbott and Costello. You had to give up everything you learned and just listen. And if anything sounded remotely like a cue, you jumped in.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was their method of working. And actually, William Sider just shot everything that was on the page. Unfortunately, Lou did his best, but it was a contentious relationship. You got to be careful what you wish for, I guess. This movie would have been better if it was Charles Barton, to be honest with you, who was good at directing human stories, as well as great comedy.
Yeah.
But anyway, William Sider did his best, and that was that. Okay, the writers. I love to talk about the writers. Well, first of all, the producer is a new producer to Abbott and Costello, Joseph Gershenson, who actually was, since 1940, the head of Universal's music department. He's credited with every Universal film, I think from 1940 to 1949 or something like that. And he started producing as well. And this was one of his first producing efforts. So we have Joe Gershenson, very musical. Writers. This is interesting. Now, this interests me more than anything else, I think. There are 3 writers responsible. John Grant was uncredited. He was brought in later. They added a couple of scenes once the film was finished. And so they got John Grant to write those scenes. But anyway, we have Paul Jarrico and Richard Collins came up with the original story, okay? The original story was called Boy Wonder, and it was written with James Stewart and Jean Arthur in mind. It was a screwball comedy about a guy who wants to get in on selling vacuums, and that he's the boy wonder. He's convinced that he could read minds and all this stuff. But Universal bought the story from their agent, Zeppo Marx. Well, this is a heavy Zeppo episode. But anyway, Zeppo sold it to Universal for $15,000. And then they proceeded to turn it into an Abbott and Costello movie, which wasn't really an Abbott and Costello movie. So anyway, let's take a look. Paul Jarrico. I have in our book, the annotated Abbott and Costello, which makes a great Christmas present, by the way. Paul Jarrico was embarrassed that his name was on an Abbott and Costello movie. Immediately, I don't like the man. And Richard Collins, too. Okay. Paul Jarrico is born 1915 in Los Angeles to 2 Russian parents, immigrants. He's born Israel Pesa Shapiro, Irish, in Los Angeles. His Russian parents formed his political beliefs. He joined the Communist Party while he was still in college. When he got out of college, he started writing for Hollywood. He was nominated for an Oscar for his script of Tom, Dick, and Harry in 1941, a pretty mediocre comedy, actually, Ginger Rogers. And he lost to a little movie called, what is it? Oh, Citizen Kane. Yeah, I forget it. Mankiewicz and Wells. So anyway, he's a commie. He's a communist, out and out. And he was turned in during the second hearings in the early 50s by Edward Dmytryk, the director, turned him in, who was married to Jean Porter, who was in Abbott and Costello in Hollywood. Things tie together here. And then again was turned in by Richard Collins, his co-writer and friend. Richard Collins ended up giving up 26 of his friends to the committee, all of them blacklisted.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that incredible? It's funny that the 2 of them, Paul Jarrico and Richard Collins, wrote on the movie Song of Russia during World War II, which was supposed to make nice with our allies, our Russian allies. So anyway, Paul Jarrico, he died in a very ironic way, I have to say. He was killed in a car accident coming home from a ceremony celebrating the 50th anniversary of those hearings. Sorry, I'm laughing, but I shouldn't. That really is, ironic.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was, 82 when it happened. Richard Collins, born in 1914 in New York City, died in 2013 at the age of 98. You know what they say about the good dying young. Came from a very rich family. joined the New Theater League, and became a member of the Young Communist League at the same time. Ended up working at every studio, co-wrote with Paul Jarrico, and he's the one that turned in His Friends. He did one of the original treatments for Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And his last gig was on, he wrote a Matlock episode in the 1970s. It wasn't Kathy Bates. So those are our writers. We left out the main one now. They handed this script, the story idea, to Walter de Leon. Now, Walter de Leon, born in Oakland, California in 1884, lived till 1947, died at the age of 63. Okay, listen to some of these movies that he wrote on. Number one, The Phantom President, the only film starring George M. Cohan, also with Jimmy Durante and Claudette Colbert. And it's funny because I get those two mixed up a lot. They're so similar. He also wrote on Tilly and Gus with W.C. Fields and Alison Skipworth. He came back to Abbott and Costello for Time of Their Lives, their very next movie. He wrote on Ghost Breakers, Bob Hope and Paulette Goddard. But most of all, he wrote on one of my all-time favorite films, Ruggles of Red Gap, directed by Leo McCarey. Yeah, this guy was quality. You had Walter de Leon writing, you had William Sider directing, and then Bud and Lou acting. So this was quite an interesting time, quite an interesting film, actually. And we'll get to the cast members as we get them, as we go through the story. Again, I've got copious notes here. I watched the film last night again, and Jerry, I know you did too. I'm interested to hear your basic opinion on Little Giant.
My basic opinion is I love it. Partially because of what it is. After 17 or so films of Abbott and Costello just being great, but Abbott and Costello all the way through, it was very entertaining to watch them take on different roles, different characterizations. And if I might say, I'm sure we'll get to this, but John Grant's presence to me is blatantly obvious in one particular scene that has that sort of a sore thumb feeling to it. It just sticks out.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
But yeah, overall, it's not only well done technically, but as you've mentioned, Lou just does a beautiful job. The pathos moments, his relations with the other characters, very believable. He's good.
And he still manages to get his shtick in.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He still trips up the stairs, and stuff like that. He does clumsy stuff, but it's not, he doesn't overtake his character with that. That's kind of an addition to a fully formed character. I'm happy you feel that way because I feel the same way you do. Yeah. What do you think of Bud? Bud plays two characters.
I was just going to say, now that we've discussed Lou, let's move on to Bud. Again, we have said this a number of times throughout the course of these podcasts. Bud could have been an outstanding character actor on his own.
I agree.
If that had been the case. And if you never believed that before, watch this movie.
Absolutely.
Because as you pointed out, he does make each of those two characters very distinct, very individual, and you believe each one of them. You almost forget the fact that this is Bud Abbott playing both of these guys.
I agree with you 100%. He is so good in this movie, and he has two ends of the spectrum. Like I said, in one case, he's horrible. He's a crook. He's a villain. You wouldn't trust him with a dime. And then the other character is really lovable and really sweet and very realistic. You believe both characters. Great assessment, Jerry, really, because I agree with you 100%. A lot of people don't like this movie, mostly because of the pathos. They feel it was heavy-handed, that Lou was out of his league, and, all this stuff. Watch it again, folks. Don't just save your opinion until you're fresh with this movie, because I have a feeling you'll look at it in a different way after listening to what we've got to say about it.
There's a marvelous moment that he has toward the end. I don't want to give it away yet.
I know.
I'm sure. Yes.
We're like reading each other's minds. I know.
Yes. It just tears my heart out every time I see it. But anyway.
And I have very strong memories about this film when I was a child, when I was a chubby little lonely child watching this movie. I cried all the way through it. I cried. I cried last night watching it.
Yeah,
Seriously,
yeah.
it's that good. All right, well, let's get started. We've got all the background people covered. Good. Even the opening logo, the universal logo, which is usually
Yes.
it has a much more dramatic theme,
Hmm.
to get us ready for this film. And even the opening music, it's got these almost a military trumpet sound. Meaning, this guy's on the march, this guy's on the move.
Yeah.
It's really, really good choices. And then the odd part, you have Bud Abbott and Lou Costello in Little Giant, right? Two separate cards. And
Hmm.
then all of a sudden they show the two of them in action. On the left is Bud, and on the right is Lou. They're not together, they're in separate scenes.
Yep.
This is to get the audience ready that they're not going to be seeing the usual movie. But what I found unusual is Lou says Lou Costello as Benny Miller, but Bud, they chose Mr. Morrison to show. Why didn't they show both characters? Or
Mm.
why didn't they show the more lovable one? I
Yeah.
just found that kind of interesting. It was a weird choice.
Well, it could be that the bad guy, I'm sorry, I just blanked
Mr.
on the
Morrison.
characters' names. Yeah, it could be that Morrison does appear first in the film, and perhaps they were trying to keep the dual role as much of a surprise
You know
until
what?
they
You're
got
right.
there.
I didn't even think about that. You're absolutely right. It probably was a surprise
No,
to the audience.
no, what they should
Um,
have done in that opening is put up the photo of him as grandma.
oh,
See, that
that,
really would have thrown people.
yeah, off a cliff.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay, so this is probably the weirdest opening of any Abbott and Costello movie ever.
Hmm.
We're on a farm in
Yeah.
Cucamonga, California, where I've been several times.
Yep.
And it is like that. It is a very rural farming community. Lovely, though, really pretty. Rolling hills, just gorgeous. Anyway, so we open on the farm, and that's where we meet Lou's mother. Lou from Paterson, New Jersey, has a Scottish mother on a farm in Cucamonga, California. now, now that I find very interesting.
Yes.
Now I know you people know Mary Gordon. I always
Oh
call
yeah.
her Dear Mary Gordon because she's so sweet. Mary Gordon was born in 1882 in Glasgow, Scotland. She lived to be 81. She died in 1963.
Mhm.
Mostly famous for playing Mrs. Hudson in the Sherlock Holmes movies with Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce.
Yep.
And we love her. We love Mary Gordon. She became a concert singer at the age of 17, got married and retired, but then her husband died during World War I. And she was widowed, had a daughter, and was a single mom. Came over to America in the mid-20s with a stock company, played some Broadway, did some stock, went to LA in the mid-20s. She made 7 films with John Ford. John Ford loved her.
Wow.
She made 3 with Laurel and Hardy. She made Bonnie Scotland. What else? Way Out West.
Hmm.
And what was the third one? Oh, Pick a Star, which really isn't a Laurel and Hardy movie. They just, cameo in it.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, she had a long, wonderful career. And boy, I remember her in, I think it was The Mummy's Ghost, where she gets strangled to death by the mummy.
Oh no!
Sweet Mary Gordon. Boy, oh boy.
No.
God, when we were kids, when that happened, it was like, what?
Yeah.
Really weird.
I've got a very strong memory of her as I believe it was Muggs McGuinness, that incarnation of Leo Gorcey, his mother.
It's his mother. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the East Side Kids movies. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, again, Leo had half Jewish, his father Bernard, and I think half Irish. His mother was Irish.
Yep.
So I guess Mary Gordon played a lot of Irish characters, even though she was from Scotland. So anyway, that's Lou's mom. And then we see Lou. Lou in his straw hat, his straw farming hat, and his overalls. I mean, he's a farmer.
Yep.
And he's sitting by his Victrola, his record player, and he is part of a mail order class teaching him how to be a super salesman. And it's just wonderful. I just love this whole section.
Yeah.
He is listening to the final lesson, and the mother comes in and, is saying, you're working too hard. You get up at 5 a.m, you milk the cows, and then you go back to your lessons. And he reminds her that he's a very slow learner. You could be referring to the scripts at this point. So then we meet. Oh, no, I don't want to go too quickly on this. Okay. He does something that made me guffaw, where I think I hurt myself, like I hurt a vein in my neck from laughing. He just gets finished telling his mother, I'm going to be a super salesman. I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm going to be the best salesman there is. And he turns around and he walks right into a column. And it is so funny and so out of the blue. And this is what I mean about Lou in this movie. All of a sudden, you trust him, you love him, you believe him, and then he'll walk into a column. Yeah. It's very funny. So who's waiting for him outside but Sid Fields, our Mr. Fields. Now, here's one of the scenes that was added later. It was shot once before with an actor by the name of Eddie Waller, but they didn't think it was good enough. They thought it was too slow, Mr. Sider. So they went back and they shot it again with Sid Fields, and he gave them exactly what was needed. Let's talk about Sid. He was born Sidney Hirsch Feldman, another Irishman, in 1898 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He had Russian parents, and eventually he got them to slow down. He was involved as a monologist. He was in amateur shows. Eventually he teamed up with a comedian by the name of Jack Greenman, and Minsky's hired them for his burlesque shows. And that's where he met Bud and Lou, of course. And the comedy team split in the mid-30s. He went to Hollywood, started writing for radio. He wrote for Rudy Valley. He joined the Eddie Cantor show as Mr. Guffey, doing pretty much what he does in this movie. He would show up and just drive Eddie Cantor crazy, being totally contrary. So then he went on to make a movie with Eddie Cantor, Strike Me Pink, in 1936. He plays a nice role, too. He worked with the Ritz Brothers in Straight Place and Show in 1938. And then in 1944, he reintroduced himself to Bud and Lou and became a writer on their radio show and Melonhead, a character that drove Lou crazy. Eventually, he worked with Jackie Gleason on the American Scene magazine for one season. He would come out and do the same thing, just be contrary with Jackie. Jackie loved him, by the way. And then he moved to Las Vegas, where he wrote a chatty showbiz column for a local paper. And he lived there till 1975, when he passed away from lung cancer. So that's the Sid Fields story. And I left out probably his greatest role, Mr. Fields, in the Abbott and Costello show for 2 seasons. Yes. And I couldn't imagine that show without him. He was the third member, of that team, that grouping. Okay, so Lou wants to sell Sid Fields everything. So he offers him gas, oil, water, eggs, jelly, marmalade, oranges. I love when he offers the eggs. He goes, and here's the eggs. My mother made them. No, the chickens laid them. But Sid isn't buying, and he does his contrary bit with him. And we're going to play a little bit of that for you right now.
How you do, sir? Help you something to some air?
And why not? It's free air, isn't it?
Yes, sir. How about some gas?
No.
How about some oil?
No.
How about some...
And I don't want any water either.
Oh, hey, mister. How about some nice, fresh California navel oranges? My mama just picked them fresh this morning.
I don't want any oranges.
But oranges are very good for you. Everybody should eat them.
Oranges are good for you, huh? My father owns a lemon grove, but you say everybody should eat oranges.
I know, but there's vitamin C in oranges, and everybody should have vitamin C.
Everybody. For 2 years, the specialists have been giving me vitamin A, B, and D, but no, you're smarter. You say I need vitamin C.
Look, mister, I'm sorry, I tripped over the oranges.
Oranges are good for you, huh?
Oranges are very good for you, mister. Look, mister, how about some nice... I'm sorry again. I'm so anxious. How about a nice jar of marmalade?
I don't eat marmalade.
You don't eat marmalade?
No.
Why don't you take a jar of marmalade home to the children? Let them have a spoonful.
1 spoonful, huh?
1 spoonful.
1 spoonful of marmalade for 11 kids. Oh, but they're only my kids. They're not entitled to any more.
Look, mister, take the whole jar. Let the kids eat the whole jar.
Oh, they should stuff themselves and get sick, huh? Now you got me paying doctor bills.
Look, I don't want you to pay any doctor bills.
Oh, a man goes to medical school for 8 years, studies day and night, becomes a doctor, saves my children's lives, and you want me to beat him out of his bill, huh?
I didn't say that.
Oh, I said it. I go around telling everybody I'm a deadbeat. I hope you're satisfied. You stuffed my kids with your marmalade. You got them sick. Now I've got to go and explain to the doctors what's wrong with them.
Oh, look, mister, you won't have to do that. They'll find out for themselves.
Oh, yeah? They should experiment on my kids, huh? Use my kids for guinea pigs. Say it. My kids are guinea pigs.
Oh, no. Your kids ain't guinea pigs.
Oh, they're just plain pigs, huh?
Look, mister, if you don't want the marmalade that my mama made this morning, how about some nice fresh eggs my mama laid this... I mean, the Leghorns laid them this morning. We got nice chickens around here.
Buddy, I don't want any eggs.
Okay, so Lou is so frazzled by all of this that he waits till Sid gets in his car, which is like a truck. It's got there's a back to it. And Lou thinks he's putting one over on him by putting everything he tried to sell on the truck. And Sid drives away. And he's so excited. Look what I did. I got rid of this stuff. And he goes inside, tells his mom, and his mom says, "Where's the money?" And he forgot to get the money. Anyway, this is where we meet his girlfriend. And I don't know about you, but I wish she was my girlfriend. Elena Verdugo.
Oh, yeah.
What a great name, first of all. Elena Verdugo. Very Spanish. I met her at a Cinecon thing one day, and I got to tell her that I love her in this movie, and I love her in House of Frankenstein, where she is the girlfriend to Lon Chaney Jr.'s Larry Talbot, and she's very good in that. She's also in The Frozen Ghost, an inner sanctum mystery with Lon Chaney and Rondo Hatton. But anyway, Elena is Lou's girlfriend, Martha. She's also the mail lady. She delivers the mail, and she brings Lou's last record from his course and the diploma. And this is one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. They do graduation exercises in the living room, listening to the record player while he's holding his diploma. He's got his girl on one side, his mother on the other side. They're all teary-eyed. Milburn Stone, by the way, is the voice of the record, the guy on the record. He's unbilled. And then this quartet starts singing their school song, their alma mater song. Can we play some of that? It's just hilarious.
The Record Correspondence School takes pride in conferring upon you this diploma of graduation, and with it the degree of B.S., Bachelor of Salesmanship. Congratulations.
Congratulations, son.
This is my alma mater song.
Ever be thy glory, famed in song and story, Record Correspondence School. Deep our devotion, over land and ocean, proudly you will rule. Record Correspondence School. Are we happy? Well, I guess. We're all students of RCS. Yes, 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 RCS. Record Correspondence School.
Resume your seat, please, and listen carefully.
All right, and you'll never guess who these people are if you have our book, The Annotated Abbott and Costello, which is a great Christmas present, by the way. It's Jack Benny's Sportsman Quartet singing that song. Isn't that great?
Yep.
And boy, you don't get more perfect harmony than that. They are just incredible.
Yes.
So anyway, Lou's crying. He graduates, and the voice on the record tells him to go to the biggest city there is, and that's Los Angeles. They're in California. So he's ready to go. He's ready to go to Los Angeles. He's hoping his uncle Clarence will help him get a job at the Hercules Vacuum Company, vacuum cleaners. He'd been with the company for 20 years, and he works as an assistant to the head manager of the company, and that's Mr. Morrison, Bud Abbott, as our villain. I like the scene where Martha drops Lou, off to go seek his fortune. She drives him to a certain point in the road, and it's such a beautiful orange grove. Did you notice that shot? And it made me realize that there was so much more of that in California at the time. You smelled orange blossoms in the air, Now you just smell homeless people and things. It's a different place. It's a completely different place.
Yeah.
And those poor people. Anyway, so she lets him off. He kisses her, gives her a little kiss on the cheek, and she says, and she gives him a full out kiss on the lips. Apparently, it's the first time. God knows how long they've been seeing each other. And Lou immediately knows that they're engaged because they kissed.
Yeah.
So she's all excited and she closes her eyes and purses her lips for another kiss. Lou just looks at her and starts walking away. He has no idea what she's doing. But anyway, Lou has to hitchhike to Los Angeles, and that he does. And when he gets there, before we get there, we get to meet Bud as Mr. Morrison and his assistant, George Cleveland, who is Uncle Clarence. Now, George Cleveland, born in 1885, passed away in 1957 at the age of 71, born in Sydney, Nova Scotia. Really, I'm serious. He had a twin brother who was actually a salmon. Very strange. Very, very strange. Sounds fishy. But anyway, so George Cleveland, born in Canada, a veteran of over 150 films, but he's mostly known for playing Gramps on the original Lassie television show.
Yes.
He was on for the first 3 seasons, made it into the 4th season until episode 12, and then he passed away. But they wrote it into the script that Gramps had died, and that's why they moved to a new location and start the whole second series of Lassie. He has another Bud and Lou connection. He's in Wistful Widow of Wagon Gap, which is one of my favorites, and Fireman Save My Child, made in 1954.
Oh.
Now, that's a movie that a lot of people think that Bud and Lou actually shot scenes from it because they hired Buddy Hackett and Hugh O'Brien to play the leads. Okay? Now, you look at them, you've got Buddy Hackett, who's short and fat. You've got Hugh O'Brien, who's kind of tall and lean in what was supposed to be an Abbott and Costello movie. Lou got sick and they couldn't do it. But they were not matching Buddy Hackett and Hugh O'Brien to Abbott and Costello, per se. They were matching them to their doubles. They had already shot long shots with the doubles. So that's why this happened. And George Cleveland is in that movie. George Cleveland always kind of reminded me of Charles Winninger, but I always liked George Cleveland better. He was less of a ham, and I think a better actor. Okay, so we find out some very important things. Number one, Mr. Morrison, mean Mr. Morrison, made up a rule that no relatives can work in the same office, in the same company. There's a no relative rule. Unfortunately, he happens to be married to his secretary, but nobody knows it. It's a secret. Mm-hmm. All right. George Cleveland keeps the books, but Bud has him keeping 2 sets of books. One is the real set of books, and the other one is the GME account, the General Manager's Emergency Fund. In other words, he's stealing thousands of dollars off the top. Mm-hmm. And again, George Cleveland knows about it, but he wants to hang on to his job, and he doesn't say a word, okay? He keeps it secret. So Lou shows up to Hercules. Now, I really like the shot of him crossing the street when he's in Los Angeles for the first time, and he's just looking ahead. He's not looking at any cars that are about to hit him. And he doesn't even notice the honking horns or the cars coming up, and he goes right into the building. That one tracking shot, it doesn't stop. It goes right into the building lobby and then right into the elevator. It's a beautiful tracking shot, and that's Bill Sider. I also wanted to mention one other thing. During the scene at the beginning that I mentioned where Lou is talking to his mother, that must have been one of the first scenes they shot because it's a simple 2-shot. It's the 2 of them talking, real dialogue. But there are like 4 different cuts during it. Cut to her, cut to him, cut to the 2-shot, cut to her, a lot of coverage for a very inconsequential scene. And I have a feeling that they pieced it together because Lou didn't remember his lines. And if you look at the outtakes, there are scenes from this where you see him screwing up and being naughty, of course, in front of dear Mary Gordon, who laughs. So anyway, Lou shows up at the building. He goes up into the Hercules company. And something happens. They're auditioning muscle men to actually be Hercules in the ads. So Bud, Mr. Morrison, is looking at all the people who are coming into his office. Well, I don't know about how you felt about this. The muscle man, they gave him a joke to say before he leaves the office. It's the absolute worst thing in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
The joke was, it said on his resume that he drinks 4 gallons of water a day. Is that true? And he says, yes, it is. I used to drink 5 gallons, but I don't get up that early anymore. That's the joke. And you hear, pull up, pull up. Oh my God. Oh.
Yep.
That is a bomb. That is a bomb that could have used one of Zeppo's clips. You know? And you'll have to look that up. All right. Zeppo's all over the place.
He is.
So he's looking at this report on his desk when the next person comes in, who he thinks is auditioning for the part of Hercules, and it happens to be Lou. Well, he doesn't look up to see that Lou is this short, fat little guy. All he says is, take off your clothes. And, excuse me? Take off your clothes. I want to see you. I want to see your muscles. And he's like, oh, my muscles. And he's like, oh, yeah, I have the biggest muscles in Cucamonga. I lift the orange crates and blah, blah, blah. And Bud's not even, he's like looking at this paper, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, Lou is in his underwear. He's in his undershirt and his underwear with his black shoes and black socks. And who walks in but Bud's wife, that we don't know it's his wife, Hazel. And Lou immediately jumps up, grabs his hat, and puts it on. So in his mind, he's dressed.
Yeah.
But anyway, he soon realizes he's almost naked in front of a woman. He bundles that. He goes and gets changed. So we find out that Bud is so embarrassed by this. He does not want to get the company horse laugh about this, and he knows he's going to get it. In fact, Lou could possibly sue him for what he did to him in the office. Mm-hmm. So they've got to make nice with Lou, and they do that by offering him a job. So he gets the job. He talks to his Uncle Clarence. Now, Uncle Clarence is constantly reminding him, don't call me Uncle Clarence. You know, there's the no relatives rule. And he's like, yes, Uncle Clarence. And it's a funny little thing that it's a running gag that goes through the movie. So he gets the job. And the next day he's out selling his vacuum cleaners. And the first thing he does is he goes up to a door and the woman closes it on his face. So he looks at the book and he realizes he has to put his foot in the door. That way she can't close it. So he puts his foot in the door. The woman smashes his foot with the door, takes his shoe, which comes off. Lou runs away, limping, turns around and says, hey, you have my shoe. And as he's saying that, the shoe hits him in the face. It's a very funny scene. So Lou's not doing too well on the first one. But there's a big surprise.
Yes.
For his next thing. Yeah, I see the smile on your face there. Guys, we get to spend some time with Margaret Dumont.
Yay!
Yay! We love Margaret Dumont. And William Sider requested her for this role. He requested 2 people for this movie. And we'll get to the other one when we get to it. All right, let's talk about Margaret Dumont just a little bit. Margaret Dumont was born, are you ready? In Brooklyn, New York.
All right.
In 1882. Her name was Daisy Juliet Baker. Where she got Margaret Dumont, I have no idea. Anyway, born in Brooklyn. She was trained as a concert singer, operatic. She did some Broadway. She toured as a singer. She did some vaudeville. And eventually, she happily married millionaire sugar heir John Mahler Jr., and she happily retired into a life of luxury. Unfortunately, he died in 1918 during the influenza plague, and she had to return to work. She had to support herself. So she went back to Broadway, reluctantly went back to Broadway, where she did numerous Broadway shows until 1925, when she was hired for the Coconuts. And that started her immortality with the Marx Brothers, which is just great. And she worked with everybody. Every great comedian wanted to work with Margaret Dumont, W.C. Fields, Wheeler and Woolsey, Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy. I mean, I can go on. Martin and Lewis. I could go on, but she was the gold standard of female foils. Let's put it that way. Anyway, so Margaret Dumont, he's trying to sell her the vacuum. But eventually he tries to show her how it can, is it like fumigate the house or something like that? Yeah. So he turns it on at the reverse button, and what comes out, all the soot, the black soot that he was collecting all through the day, comes out all over her white drapes, her beautiful white sofa, her white rug. Everything's white, of course.
Of course.
And the soot is flying. And of course, we hear Margaret Dumont, it's a wonderful scene. It really is. The next scene is Lou in a phone booth talking to the office, telling him what happened. Oh, you wouldn't believe it. All of a sudden, there's dirt flying all over this woman's house. And, everything was ruined. And then I turned around and I realized somebody stole my demonstration model. So not only did it cost $2,000 to take care of Margaret Dumont's house, which translates to $28,000 in today's money.
Yeah.
So $28,000. And then he lost his demonstration model as well. So he gets fired. And this is really the first kind of where you shed a little tear, You see him defeated. And he has a long talk with his Uncle Clarence. Oops, I said Uncle Clarence. And this is the scene in the back of the taxi cab, and there are some wonderful outtakes from this scene. They really enjoy each other. They're really respectful of each other, and they're enjoying their scene. Lou's not being, dirty or a bad boy. He actually shows respect for this actor who's, 20 years older than he is. It's really quite nice. So they get in the scene, and Clarence suggests to Lou that he goes to a smaller market. He knows the manager of the Stockton branch. Now, I've been to Stockton, California, and you don't get much smaller town than that. It's really something. But anyway, this introduces Abbott's second character, Mr. Chandler. He shows up and he sees Mr. Chandler and thinks it's Morrison because they look so much alike, although Chandler has a little mustache, and his hair is combed, his toupee, I should say, is combed in this almost like 1890s kind of curl up front. It's weird. Isn't that weird? And so Lou goes crazy. He's like, he thinks it's Morrison, and he does some great physical stuff here, where he tries to get out of the office and he runs into the door. It's just great stuff. When they finally realizes that it's not Morrison, this is where the sore thumb comes in. And it's a dead giveaway because during the footage that was shot later, Bud's hair is different. It's two different looks if you look closely. So what happens? What are we upset about? This movie was not a movie to showcase their routines that they did in every other movie. They showcased the burlesque routines. But Universal was afraid. They were afraid that the audience wasn't going to accept this kind of a movie. So they got John Grant to add this scene, which they had already done in the Navy, and done better, I will say. But they do 7 times 13 is 28. It's kind of shoehorned in. And all of a sudden, Mr. Chandler, who is this lovable, sweet guy, becomes Bud Abbott. And he's pushing Lou, he's pushing him into the blackboard. Come on, show me, come on. All of a sudden, he's not anyone we know. He's Bud Abbott. So this was, I think, a mistake. And I liken this to the joke in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. When Frankenstein gets scared of Lou, it's the one joke that they do, but I wish they hadn't have done it. So anyway, this I feel that way about this.
I will say, though, in my opinion, as much as I love 7 times 13 is 28, in the Navy on the TV show, Colgate Comedy Hour, where they did it, to me, this version of it, out of place as it is, has the best button because they tie it in.
Oh, I'll give you the job.
It's sales. 7 salesmen, they have to sell 28 vacuums is the premise.
Yes.
And Chandler basically says when they come to the final stage of the addition, add it all up, it comes up to what? 28. Yeah. He says, it does, and you've got a job.
Right.
They add it up, it's 28. He says, you're hired.
Right, which is a great ending,
Yes.
Thank you, John Grant. That was a very nice way to, put it in. But still, I
It is out of place, yeah.
I wish it weren't there. I wish he would just give him the job. I'll give you a chance. Clarence is a friend of mine. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So, okay. I left out what is probably my favorite scene in the movie, and as far as comedically. And this has to do with his train ride to Stockton. He has to catch the train to Stockton, and he has to sleep in an upper berth. Now, the train conductor is our wonderful Donald McBride.
Yes.
Always worried, always upset, always looking like he has like an ulcer in every organ of his body. First of all, you have to hear this dialogue. If you don't mind, Jerry, I would love.
What's your birth? March 6th night. Where do you sleep? In bed. On the train. Oh, I don't know. You got a ticket? Yes, sir. Upper 6. Upper 6? Where's that? Upper 6. Where's that? Up there?
The biggest laugh in the movie is where Lou finally gets up into the top bunk and berth, and the train takes a curve, takes a real turn, curved track, and Lou falls out of the upper berth, and he gets into the wrong one. He gets into one with a young lady, a very pretty young lady, who screams. He jumps out, jumps into his berth. Just as Donald McBride is coming out, Donald McBride turns around towards the scream. She comes out and slaps Donald McBride in the face. It's the funniest scene in the movie. As far as I'm concerned, every time I see it, I explode. It's absolutely hilarious. And his response is just priceless. So anyway, then Lou does what Laurel and Hardy did to death in Birthmarks. That's a scene I just praise the existence of the fast forward button. Laurel and Hardy just, would you stop? Get out of my way! It was, oh my God, it was relentless. And if you're claustrophobic like I am, you don't want to deal with it at all. And I feel a little bit about that here. And
it's almost like this is a scene that everybody has done.
Yes, it seems that way.
Few of them do it well.
Well, because it's
in my opinion, it's
something that's just so uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah,
it's kind of like Ollie stepping on that 3-inch rusty nail in music box. It's like, who put that in there? Whose idea was that? This is funny. But anyway, Lou does it better than Laurel and Hardy because it's actually faster. And the payoff is funny. We see it's morning, finally. Donald McBride comes to wake him up, and Lou is still half-dressed with his face in the net where you put your clothes and your shoes. And he looks horrible. He didn't get a wink of sleep, poor guy. So he shows up in Stockton. They do the 7 times 13. We take a look at Bud's grandma picture. He points. He says, "Oh yes, I'm Mr. Morrison's cousin. In fact, here's a picture of our grandmother." And they show a great close-up of Bud in drag. It's very funny. Okay, so he's hired. He's there for 2 weeks, and he does not sell one vacuum cleaner. And Mr. Chandler, as nice as he is, tells his secretary Ruby, played by the beautiful Brenda Joyce, to fire him. He wrote out a letter to Lou and asks her to give it to him and fire him. So all the boys are going to the bar that night, and this was the first thing that used to really hurt me when I was a kid. A lot of things came back to me as I was watching last night. When all the guys are going to the bar, they're going to Joe's to hang out after work, and Lou is standing there by himself, and they turn and say, "You coming? You going to get a drink?" And Lou says, "Oh, I don't drink." And they were like, "Yeah, see, come on, let's go." And they leave him there alone.
Yep.
And right away, that's when my eyes would start filling up. And it's like, poor Lou. And then Ruby comes out, Brenda Joyce, who, interesting career here. She was born in, ready? Excelsior Springs, Missouri. Who comes up with these names? Excelsior Springs. Hey, Murray, you got a name you're not using? Yeah, sure. How about Excelsior Springs? All right. So weird. Anyway, her real name was Betty Graftina Liabo. Leabo. Yeah, Graftina. And she was known as Graftina. That's what they called her when she was a kid. They moved to LA when she was 5. She ended up going to USC and UCLA and modeled her way through college. Eventually, she was signed by MGM, where she replaced Jane, Maureen O'Sullivan, in the Tarzan movies, which moved over to RKO, and she continued there. She did 5, I think, altogether. Worked with 2 Tarzans, Johnny Weissmuller and Lex Barker, I think. Anyway, you could look that up if you want to. And she lived to be 92. She was born in 1917, died in 2009. And here's my favorite of her credits. She played Burgess Meredith's wife in that Twilight Zone episode, Time Enough at Last.
Yes.
I love that one. It's one of the top 3 Twilight Zones, of course. She played, no, that was Jackie DeWitt. I'm sorry, not Brenda Joyce. Please forgive me.
Okay.
I'm looking at my notes and they're all screwed up. No, Jacqueline DeWitt played Burgess Meredith's wife, and she's Hazel in the movie. She plays Bud Abbott's wife.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and Brenda Joyce retired in 1949, so she was kind of out of it early on. Before she started doing PRC movies and monogram movies and things like that. Okay, so Ruby says, come on, let's go to the bar with the boys. So she takes him in. And speaking of taking him in, he sits down with the boys and they immediately start making fun of him. They do this fake mind reading thing with him. They say, you know, if you go out of the room, we'll pick an object, you come back and see if you can pick the object that we picked. So he does it. And of course, they tell Ruby, it doesn't matter what he points to. We're going to tell him that's what it is. So they do it once and he's all excited. He's like, oh, I knew I had this gift. I knew it. So they said, but no, let's try it differently now. We want to put cotton in your ears and, a towel around your eyes. So just so he looks more ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And the bartender, Burt Roach, who was once a comedy star during the silent days, now he's a bartender. He takes him into the back room and then leads him out, and he looks ridiculous with the cotton sticking out of his ears and everything. And of course they do it again and he picks the right thing. So he's convinced that he's a mind reader. And Ruby is just feeling really bad about this. This is ridiculous. So he walks her home. And while they're walking home, and this is another great tracking shot, it just goes on and on and on. And there are outtakes here, by the way, and Lou does get very naughty. Brenda Joyce is like, she's embarrassed actually by it. But anyway, they're walking and she's trying to tell him, you're not a mind reader. And she's trying to tell him that he's going to be let go and all this. And he misconstrues it. He tells her, no, I am a mind reader. And he feels that she's asking him to marry her. Mm-hmm. That's how naive he is. And it's very, very sad. And she's sad about it. And she can't give him the letter. And so the next morning, Bud, Mr. Chandler, asks if he gave her the letter and gave him the letter. And she says, no, I couldn't do it. And he's kind of angry about that. But Lou goes out to sell with this new confidence that he has a mind-reading ability. And there's another actress that William Sider requested, and that's Dorothy Christie, who played Stan Laurel's wife in Sons of the Desert. Mm-hmm. And she plays the wife at home, and Lou talks to the husband before he leaves for work, and he says, you know what, it's my wife's birthday. If she wants it, give it to her. So he goes in and says, your husband just bought you a vacuum cleaner. I'll bet all your friends are going to be jealous. So of course she says, you know what? My sewing circle is coming over today. I'm going to show them this thing and blah, blah, blah. So back at the office, all the guys are talking about how they didn't make their sales quota. One he sold to his mother-in-law. Another one, he spent all day cleaning this woman's house and she didn't buy anything. And all of a sudden, Lou comes in. And he starts, I used to love this when I was a kid. He'd go up to the board and what you do is when you sell one, you put a star next to your name and there's a whole row. And everybody's supposed to sell like 4 a week. That's the quota. Lou comes in, he sold 9. He broke the company record because of the husband telling it and the wife showing the sewing circle. So he's the big deal. He's the big deal. And he tells everyone, thank you guys. I never realized I was a mind reader and this really helps and da, 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 da. So Mr. Morrison hears about this in the main office in Los Angeles. And Lou is dropping names because of his Uncle Clarence told him about the GME account. And when Lou brings it up, Bud is like, uh-oh, we better get rid of this guy. He knows too much. So what does he do? He invites Lou to Los Angeles to give him a job there, and he sends his wife, Hazel, to seduce him. And that way, Bud could come to the apartment and shoot him, basically, for being, in a compromising position with his wife, which is a little weird because you're not supposed to know it's his wife. So, before this happens, I just want to say one more thing about one of the cast members who works for Mr. Chandler, one of the salesmen. His name is Victor Killian. Now, Victor Killian, born in 1891 in Jersey City, he died in 1979 at the age of 88. He made hundreds of movies. He usually played a villain, and he plays one of the salesmen here. He's very good. But what I wanted to mention, not only was he one of the blacklisted actors in the 1950s, but when he came back, he became famous in the late 1970s for being on Mary Hartman, that TV show, the Norman Lear show. Yep. He played the grandfather, who was also known as the Fernwood Flasher. And he was a very popular character on the show. I used to watch the show just for Victor Killian. And okay, but here's the sad part. There's a lot of sad things in this one. Victor Killian and his dear friend, actor Charlie Wagenheim, they both did an episode of All in the Family in 1979. They were in it together, and they were so happy to be working together, the two of them. Well, they didn't get to see that episode because on March 6th, 1979, which was Lou's birthday, by the way, Charlie was bludgeoned to death by his caregiver. Oh. He was in his late 80s, and they got into an argument, and this person bludgeoned him to death. 5 days later, March 11th, my father's birthday, Victor Killian is coming home with groceries, walks into his apartment and finds burglars, and they bludgeoned him to death at the age of 88. So the two of them, within 5 days of each other, bludgeoned to death.
Wow.
Is that horrible?
Yeah.
Just horrible. And he was he was so good. Anyway, that's a terrible story. But okay, so we're moving on. And Hazel takes Lou to, I love this, the Venice Amusement Park Pier, which was there for years. And that's where you went. You would go to an amusement park on the pier. And so they come home, and Lou is loaded down with stuffed animals and balloons and, one of those things that you blow into and it unravels, it unrolls.
Yes.
Yeah. And she looks like she's been through World War III. So, he's all excited. Oh, that was wonderful to shoot the shoots and the blah, blah, blah. And she went through the list of the things he ate, and it takes about 10 minutes. He ate everything under the sun while they were out. And he's like a 2-year-old. It's very cute. And so she slips into something more comfortable, let's say. And he tries her drink, which is an alcoholic drink. And he does something that I've never seen done before or since, a double spit take. Lou does a double spit take, and it's incredible. He drinks it. He thinks it's like, I don't know, brown milk. And he drinks it, and he's like that. And it's 2 in a row, and it's fantastic. So anyway, she comes out. She puts a sleeping pill in his drink. Oh, and she also gets him to smoke a cigar because he's in town to pick up his $10,000 reward for being the best salesman. And he's going to be honored at a special thing that night. And Bud wants to keep him away from it. And that's another reason he wanted his wife to, seduce him. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Lou is smoking the cigar because he's told that he has to smoke a cigar with all the other guys once he gets to the meeting, but he gets sick to his stomach. And I always say, if this were color, he would turn like light green. It's terrible. It would make me sick to watch it, and he does that so well. He does the sickness so well. Mm-hmm. And it's also very ironic because there are very few private pictures of Lou where he doesn't have a lit cigar in his mouth or in his hand. He was a cigar fanatic. I always wondered about that because I hate the smell of cigars, and it must have been obnoxious after a while, I'd have to say. Lou gets sick. They do the whole thing where he falls into the bathtub. Jackie DeWitt talks about how the director and Lou were both in on it. They made it as difficult as possible for her to pull him out of the full tub of water, and Lou kept pulling her in and getting her nightgown all wet. She was very happy this shoot ended eventually.
Yeah.
She was an actor. Okay, and she drinks the sleeping pill drink by mistake. Lou goes to sleep in one bed. She's right next to him in another bed, twin beds, and they're both in pajamas. So Bud comes home and sees this and goes absolutely nuts. Not before we meet Chester Conklin, who shows up to take Lou's clothes to have them pressed and dried and all that.
Yes.
He even gets a line, and he's got the mustache.
My gosh, I just watched that and thought, they're wasting Chester Conklin.
Oh, definitely. But
this is incredible.
That's what he did for the rest of his life. He showed up for a bit, But he's also, I noticed in one of my research things that Chester Conklin's in Abbott and Costello in Hollywood, but he was announced to be in it. But the author of this book said that he couldn't find him, that he wasn't in it. I found him. He wasn't wearing his mustache, and he's there at the very beginning of the chase scene. Lou says something to him, and I don't believe he has a line, but he's there. So anyway, that's it. If you want to go back and look at Abbott and Costello in Hollywood, you'll see Chester Conklin for like 2 seconds. All right, so Bud comes in, and he's completely surprised. He did not expect this much to have happened. The two of them in bedclothes, in their beds, So I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him, blah, blah, blah. So who shows up at this point but Martha, Lou's fiancée, who went to see Clarence, not Uncle Clarence, no. And he pretty much lets it slip where Lou is at this point, and she goes there without him knowing it. She goes to the address, and that's why she shows up. So not only is Lou in trouble with Bud, he's now in trouble with his fiancée, Martha. So she walks out, and Bud is like ready to kill him, but it turns out that he's late for the celebration for Lou, and Bud has to go. So he leaves, and Lou has to get dressed and, get ready and go. The entire time he's being yelled at by Martha, I can't believe you were with this woman, and blah, blah, blah. And Lou finally turns around and tells her, come on, you know me. This is not what you think. And they're fine. They work it out. Then Lou opens the door to the meeting. And it's a big meeting. Everybody's there. There's like an audience. Bud is up on like a makeshift stage with the Mr. Van Loan, the head of the company. And they're laughing at Lou. They're talking about how, he thought he was a mind reader. That got a big laugh. And then he invited Ruby, Brenda Joyce, to Los Angeles to tell her story. Now, I always found this was weird. Why would Ruby turn on Benny that way? Yeah. She liked Benny. They were friends. Yeah. But she had to tell the truth, I guess, or lose her job. But she tells them about how he thought she was proposing to him, and he, really thought he was a mind reader, but they were just joking. And this is what kills me. First of all, he sees Ruby and he gets all excited, and he closes the door and turns to Martha and says, "That's Ruby. That's my friend. Isn't she cute?" And she says to him, "First Hazel, now Ruby? It's like, who else do you have?" And she turns on him and leaves him. Mm-hmm. And that's, no, Martha. It's really sad. But then he turns back and he opens the door, and that's when he hears Ruby talking about what a fool he is, basically, or what a fool they made of him. Mm-hmm. And this is the scene that just totally throws me. Is this the one you were thinking about, Jerry?
Yep. This is it.
This is the walk. The Lou Costello walk.
Yes.
He's listening at the door, and you just see his spirit leave his body. He can't even stand up straight. He's leaning against the thing, and he just feels like the biggest loser in the world. And as he closes the door to the sound of their derisive laughter, he does his walk. His back is to the camera, and he just walks very slowly to the elevators, and your heart breaks for him. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful moment. And to all of you out there who deride this movie or don't think that Lou had it, or maybe he relied too much on pathos, I'm sorry, kids. Sorry. I'm an actor. So's Jerry. Mm-hmm. We're a little bit more what's the word? Oh God, I can't think of the word. We're a bit more educated on acting and things like that. Okay. So anyway, Lou he just blows us away in this one. So we're heading towards the ending. Lou is totally broken. His spirit is totally broken. You see him walking sadly down the road back towards his farm, coming home without the $10,000 that he promised his mother he would make. He bought his mother a little canary that he has in a little cage. And he happens upon Mr. Perkins, the farmer. And Mr. Perkins is having trouble with his mule. His mule drives his little cart. And he asked Lou to help him so that way Lou could get a ride with him for the rest of the way. Well, it turns out, and I'm so sorry, I was supposed to look this up yesterday and I forgot, but this guy and his mule were an actual act. They were a vaudeville act for years and years, and they even show up on the Colgate Comedy Hour with Bud. Remember? The one where they're for Eisenhower's inauguration in Washington.
In Washington, yeah, and it's the Democratic donkey.
The donkey
on that show, yeah.
And it ends up sitting on Lou and doing all the kicks. Same guy.
I never made the connection. Wow.
It hit me, not this time, but the time before this, when I was writing the book, I noticed it. And I thought, yeah, this is just like the guy from the Colgate Comedy Hour. So if you want to look it up, guys, whoever's listening, I'm sure he's listed as far as who he is. So anyway, the mule goes crazy, destroys the cart, and then chases Perkins down the road in hot pursuit. And poor Lou, he had fallen into the wagon, which is all broken. He gets up. This is the other part that used to kill me when I was a kid. He holds up the bird cage, and it's all broken, and the bird flew away. He didn't even have the bird to take home to his mom. I'm sorry. It sounds hokey, it sounds corny, but it works.
Why does.
Because Lou Costello was a great actor. I'm sorry, but he was.
Yep.
All right. So he gets home, and who's waiting for him? His mother, Martha, his fiancée, Mr. Chandler, Ruby, and Mr. Van Loan, the head of the company. Why are they there? Lou forgot to pick up his $10,000 prize money for being the best salesman. He also forgot to collect his double commission on all the sales he made. And he hands the check to his mom saying, "Here, Mom, it's yours." And then he notices Martha, and the two of them smile at each other knowingly. They walk out the Dutch doors and only close the bottom one. A Dutch door are the ones that they're half doors, and the top opens away from the bottom and the bottom opens away from the top. Well, they just leave the bottom closed and the top open. And Bud leans over and winks, at everybody there saying, "Unfinished business." So, but then you hear Lou, and you see him running up towards the farmhouse in a long shot, and you hear him, "Ma, Ma, Ma," and he does this incredible fall over the bottom Dutch door, a complete flip onto his butt. And he looks up with all the joy of a small child and says, "We're going to be married." And it fades out on that. And I'm starting to tear up here.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but it's a beautiful ending. It's just gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And we didn't mention that he does it in the beginning of the film. He also does the fall over the Dutch door as sort of a setup, I guess, to this one. It's probably something he did all the time. So that is the ending of Little Giant. And it happens to be a movie that I like very much. Yeah. Matthew Coniam, my co-author on the annotated Abbott and Costello, which is a great Christmas present, he says that he's sick and tired of fans deriding this movie because it's actually a very good film. And they're both very, very good in it. Yeah. He even mentions, he says, Bud could have been part of Preston Sturges' company, Lou proved that he's a starring comedian. He could have worked on his own easily. And we see it in the next film too. Think about him in Time of Their Lives. And Bud, getting a lot of the laughs, playing the psychiatrist and also playing the villain in the beginning of the film. Mm-hmm. So that might have been might have been, if those films didn't do well, which they didn't, they were disappointing at the box office. But had they done well, that would have been the future of Abbott and Costello, I think.
Yeah.
I think eventually Lou would have moved on to starring roles, and Bud would have gone off to do character roles in films and do very well.
Yep.
So yeah, that's it's really good. It's really a good movie, and I want you to give it a chance. I'm telling you guys, and I'm telling you that you might cry. You just might cry.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you wise guys out there, and there are a few of you out there, one especially who just drives me nuts. Everybody who writes to me about this podcast says the same thing. We love this. We love spending time with you guys. Oh, thank you so much. There's this one guy. His name is Russell something. I didn't bother to learn the whole name. He thinks my Bud Abbott sounds more like Burgess Meredith and Rocky. Which I find, again, I've actually thanked him. But he keeps coming up with things that he finds bad, and they're not bad, the things he mentions, but he's just a negative person. And he's the only person, really, who has said anything negative. So I want to thank you all for the nice words. I'm going to remind you again, if you're watching on or listening on YouTube, please press like, subscribe. Okay, it doesn't cost you anything, and it takes just a moment. Okay, please do that for us because it'll help us in the future. And if you're going to any of the other outlets, please write to us. Let us know what you think. Okay, sometimes I anonymously use your write-ups about our podcast because they're so nice. So and again, you could find these films from Universal, the Universal Collection, either the DVDs, which are a little cheaper, or the Blu-rays, and you get, I think it's 28 films, Universal films. Yeah. And Warner Archive has some of them. And you were saying something about Noose Hangs High, Jerry.
Yes, that one has been very difficult to track down.
It's asking hundreds of dollars, actually, on Amazon.
My goodness, yes. It's really the one gaping hole in my Abbott and Costello film collection. But don't give up. Keep looking. Just today, I found one on eBay listed as new, unopened, for like $25. So
well worth it. Well worth
yes.
it. One of their better films.
Yes.
And speaking of things that I just found, I did not mention this delivery from Kevin Brownlow. I know
so
you thought
it's
so close.
We were so close.
So close. But there is one here, and it is interesting because when Abbott and Costello made Jack and the Beanstalk, this was a Lou Costello production. It was his movie. And Lou could sing. Lou was known as a song and dance man in burlesque during the early days. And we've heard him sing, and he's very good. But Bud was not confident with his singing voice. So he was dubbed in those movies. But before that happened, Lou set him up with a very famous Italian singing teacher. His name was, let me just look for a second, Professor Rigoletto Spumoni. Professor Rigoletto Spumoni actually came to the studio and gave Bud actually just one lesson. It worked out that way. And we do have some footage, audio here that of that lesson. Hold on one second. I'll put that on. All right, Mr. Abbotto, we're going to teach you to sing a little bit for you. What I want to do, you comes from La Banza. La Banza up through the mask. You can you do that, Mr. Abbott? Certainly. Mr. Abbotto, no, this is a family. No, don't. It's not like this. You need rhythm. You have to have a date in rhythm. You see, you go. See, that's now you could do it with the snap of the fingers, right? You could clap at the hands. Wait a minute. I've got it. No, let's do it again. Let me do it again. All right, Mr. Abbotto, here we go. You go. Ow! Blah! Ow! Blah! Ow! That's it. Stop it. You hurt my face. Ow, that hurts. You clap at the hands and not the face. What are you? That's all we have. And Bud ended up not singing. He was dubbed by their friend Milt Bronson, who, doesn't sound at all like Bud. But anyway, that's the footage from Kevin Brownlow. Poor Kevin, if he knew what I was doing. Anyway, Jerry, as usual, I just want to tell you, it's always such a pleasure to spend time with you. Thank you.
I enjoy our time together as well, in spite of these wonderful finds that you come up with.
I'm sorry, but I have to play to our audience. You know, they dig this Bud Abbott stuff. So.
You know, the comments that I get, first is always, I love the podcast, and second is about these. Yeah, so
it's so funny. Well, it is interesting, you know, to put Bud in different situations.
Yeah.
But we do it with great love and great respect. Honestly,
Yes.
I'm a big Bud Abbott fan. All right, kiddos, thank you so much for joining us. Next week, one of the most popular Abbott and Costello movies of their entire career, and that's The Time of Their Lives. Another experiment, actually more successful than this one, I believe. It's like they got it down for this one. So join us for another deep dish dive, and that'll be the last one, actually, before I go to Europe in January. I'm going to Albania, believe it or not. I want to check it out just in case I want to move there. And I'm going to hop over to Italy for a couple of days, which is just over the Adriatic. It's an hour-long plane ride. So, I'm going to be looking around. It's kind of a, how can I put this?
A fact-finding mission?
Yeah, I want to get a feel for it and see if I could be happy there. The economy is just amazing. I'm staying at a bed and breakfast for 10 days, and it's costing me $280. That's $28 a day.
Wow.
And that's typical. I mean, that's nothing. You could live for under $1,000 a month, your expenses. And that's everything, including rent. Yeah. So I want to check this out before it's spoiled by too many people. I want to check it out. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's that. We'll see you for Time of Their Lives. And Jerry, you have a great couple of weeks, okay?
And you as well, my friend. Till next time.
Till next time. And goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining us.